The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and the Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. In this edition, we discuss From Harm to Healing, United to Ending Violence through Public Health.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
Good day and the way forward. My name is Toni Frederick-Armstrong. I'm your host, and this is our final in a series of conversations that focus on our independence theme of perpetual progress, a sustainable future in view, Independence 42. And today we are talking about a very important, we're having, I hope, a very important conversation on a significant issue, a significant national issue. And that is dealing with challenges we have with violence. And so the theme of today's conversation is From Harm to Healing, United to End the Violence through Public Health. And we actually have some folks here from the Citizen Security Secretariat, which was born out of the Prime Minister's campaign to end violence through public health. This was a 90-day campaign that was launched a couple of years ago. And as the 90 days was coming to an end, there was a realization that this needed to be an ongoing project, an ongoing program. And so we have with us today two folks from the now Citizen Security Secretariat, and another guest with us who as well is involved in working to end the violence, to curb the violence, to reduce the violence, and address all of these issues. My guests today, to my immediate right, we have Ms. Eartha Carey, who is the coordinator of the Citizen Security Secretariat. Mr. Hance Richards, next to her, is the research data analyst from the Secretariat. And on the far end, we have Mr. Rami Gumbs, who's a Deputy Assistant Communications Officer in the Communications Unit at the Nevis Island Administration. And Mr. Gumbs also works with at-risk youth, speaking in particular about his own experiences, having, when he was younger, been involved with gangs, been incarcerated, and so on. And he uses that experience to now speak directly to youth who are at risk of, or at, the age and stage where they're making decisions that can really affect the rest of their lives and our lives as well. But I'd like to start with Ms. Carey in particular to talk a little bit about the Secretariat. I did mention at the start that it was born out of what was just supposed to be a 90-day campaign. So tell me a little bit about it being expanded into a whole Secretariat and the work that you are charged with.
Okay, sure. Good afternoon, all. So I am Eartha Carey, coordinator for the Citizen Security Secretariat. The purpose of formulating the Secretariat is that the Prime Minister would have recognized the rise in crime and violence across the Federation. And after doing research, after listening to the voices, it was best that we looked at it from a different perspective. And that's when he decided to look at it more holistically, and that would be coming from a public health perspective. Now, you know, when we hear about crime and violence, we just automatically only think about whether it's the gunshot wounds or the stabbing and stuff like that. But it goes so much deeper than just that. And when we say public health approach, we had to look at areas such as where it started, the grassroots of it, and we delve in it from a more wider aspect where we look at going into seeing where it could probably came from, whether it's home issues or lack of employment, stuff like that. So instead of just looking at the forefront, we went deeper, went on the back end, did research, and we tackled it, going deeper into the communities to find out exactly what can be the cause. And you will be amazed at the findings once we get over to Hance's information.
No, is the Secretariat's role at this stage more of a data collection and understanding the problem and working on projects to address the problems?
Yes, it is.
As opposed to rolling out these projects? Are you rolling out programs as well?
The thing is, Tony, there are already existing programs, and instead of reinventing the wheel, we're just looking at the data. Of course, we're looking at information that would tell us, okay, you need to improve in this area, you need to guide persons to this resource or this program that already exists. But the thing is, after we looked at it more holistically, we would have recognized, okay, we're probably taking the wrong approach, we should go about it a different way, and we should say, okay, let's penetrate more resources over in this area versus focusing on one particular area. There are so many repeated resources out there, so the Secretariat now will serve also as a hub to collect all this information, so it will be in one stationized area, so we can say, let's say you're coming today, or we meet you in the communities, because we meet you where you are, right, and you have an issue that has to do with counseling, you need some sort of counseling on a parent side, then we just connect you to that department. Again, it's their persons not knowing what exactly that they do, so we just take your information, listen to what you say, and we guide you to that resource. So it's just that they're already there, but many persons do not know that they exist.
No, I'm going to throw this out to everyone really, but how does the sort of applying a public lens approach, if you will, how does that aid in violence reduction compared to, say, just a purely law enforcement approach? So instead of just you follow the laws, you lock them up, you put them, you know, what does approaching it from this other angle, is it more, I should ask you, is it more effective, and how so? And I want to ask all of you all this, including you, Mr. Gumbs, because I want to know if that is a more effective strategy than just the old lock them up and throw them in the slammer kind of thing.
So to speak, yes. I would say yes. It's just more than that. But Hance would give you a much more in-depth reason as to what you're asking.
So looking at the data, Mr. Data Analyst, this is Mr. Richards, who I mentioned earlier, if you're just joining us, is the Research Data Analyst with the Citizen Security Secretariat. So his work is key because he's looking at the numbers and he's telling us, is this working? Like statistically, are we seeing that this is effective? So let's put that to you. Fundamentally, does taking a public health approach seem to be more efficient or seem to be achieving more than just a purely law enforcement strategy?
Good afternoon to the listening audience. Thanks for having me. And as you mentioned, I'm Hance Richards, and I'm the analyst behind the whole Secretariat, or the work that we put in as it relates to crime and violence as a public health issue. And it's difficult for me to respond to your question in a single form. I have to kind of give you there's so much information to give you. So let me start simply by saying there are some characteristics that we looked at and compare crime and violence to other infectious diseases, such as we are using COVID-19. Well, I'm using COVID-19, and I'm speaking COVID-19 because it is the most recent public health infectious disease that we would have suffered in. Obviously, it was a pandemic. So it's easy for persons to jot their memory back as to what an infectious disease looked like and what are the characteristics of an infectious disease. And so when I do that, it enables you to understand from those characteristics of COVID, does crime and violence look like COVID? Yes, it does. Does it behave like COVID? Yes, it does. Does it have the same characteristics that measure it to be called a public health issue? Yes, it does. So when you look at those characteristics, the epidemiological characteristics, then it is considered a public health issue and only could be compared as an infectious disease.
Oh, I find that fascinating, by the way. But tell me how. How does crime and violence behave the same way as COVID?
Okay, so crime and violence, there are 4 characteristics. Before I give you statistics, crime and violence has 4 characteristics that makes it an public health issue, an infectious disease. 1, prevalence. And prevalence, for those who doesn't, prevalence is basically how often crime occur, homicide occur, the numbers you have. And just give me 1 second to put up some numbers for the public. Okay, so if you can go to, okay, there you go. So if you look at the numbers, so the characteristic number 1 is the numbers, the increase of the numbers, the prevalence, how often, how frequent. All right, so we have 2002 to 3 to 2023. All right, we have other data available, but I'm just giving you something quickly. And so when you look at that, the prevalence, so for any issue, public health issue to be considered an epidemic, it has to have 10 to 100,000 population of reoccurrence. St. Kitts at the time, when we started the approach, was 60. So, and then we were at 20. And then at points when we were 50. But we always above the epidemic threshold. And so when we look at it in that way, the prevalence is high. Just like in COVID, remember the numbers we were having was staggering, yeah? So that's number 1, right? That's number 1 characteristic. Number 2, but let me recheck. But the reality is it's curable or could be prevented. COVID was prevented because what we did, we were in mass, right? And we social distance, that's how we prevent it. How are we going to prevent crime and violence from escalating? Like the gentleman next to me, I will get to that because it's very interesting. It's a very interesting piece of information. So it's curable or preventable once there are interventions, all right? And then number 2, let's go again with COVID. Incidence. So you have the prevalence. Remember I said the prevalence is the number of homicides over a period. Now incidence is how frequent. So you remember the former government would come and say they would say where we had 10 cases in this day, 10 cases in that day. So the incidents were very frequent. They were increasing very fast. And if the incidents increase, obviously the prevalence would increase. That's in COVID-19. Again, if you look at the shootings we have, within a period of time, the shooting, like for example, 2025, we had 3 shootings in half a tree in 1 week. The incidence of that case is pretty high. That's number 2. Number 3, cost and burden. How much it costs a government or any government in anywhere in the world for them to deal with a homicide, whether fatal or non-fatal. $150,000 for one person in St. Kitts and Nevis. In countries like Bahamas, Jamaica, have like 95 million annually US just to deal with homicides. And again, gang-related activities, whether it's fatal or non-fatal. And somebody would have asked me, what do I mean? How could be 150,000 in Little St. Kitts? Ambulance, have to move from one place to the next, gas. Wear and tear of the ambulance, nurses, doctors, EMT. Then you have the police, you have the soldiers. Yeah, so you see, so we probably even past 150. But the guy told me it's a margin of 150. That's 1. So that's 3, right? And the 4th one is it's preventable, it's curable. But again, if you go back and the Prime Minister said wear your mask and we didn't wear a mask, we would still be dealing with COVID. So it takes an all community and a holistic approach. So those are the 4 things. So, and if you look at crime and look at COVID, aren't they the same? Yes or no?
Amazing.
Yes, there you go.
Amazing, I kid you not. All right. So we're talking about uniting to end violence through a public health approach. And no, I really get it. And I'm sure that the listeners and the viewers get it. You've actually broken this down in a scientific way. And I think this is now where we can jump off from as we look at the approach itself. I want to draw Mr. Gumbs into the conversation. Tell me your feeling about looking at crime and addressing violence this way in a scientific way. Do you think that they're on the right track with this?
Yeah. You asked the question if their methods of operation is any better than lockup. And
but let's say more effective. We need the law enforcement.
Yes.
We do.
Yes.
We can't do it, you know.
But when you lock up individuals and cast them in prison, life continues behind them, right? And so individuals like myself was able to come out and transform my life because of rehabilitative opportunities that was afforded to us in there, right? The approach of just locking up and throwing away or casting in prison in and of itself it has the potential to breed criminals if these type of methods is not implemented, whether behind here or out here.
It's critical.
Yes, it is extremely critical. To me, it is very efficacious what they are doing, and I would strongly recommend that because sometimes I feel like individuals of their caliber, I don't remember your names, forgive me.
That's fine. Yes.
But the implementation of the type of things that they implement is far-reaching, but sometimes delving into the communities or going and getting asking individuals who've been involved or engrossed in these type of criminal activities could even give you more. But they are definitely on the right track. And as I said, the reason why I cannot say no, because anything is better than just locking up and throwing away in the prison. You need some form of rehabilitative method, whether it is behind here or out here. And that is what they are saying is to me.
Right. And that's where the science comes in as well, because it's no point just throwing programs at the issue or throwing, if you haven't looked at whether or not this could be effective.
Yes.
You know, I know another challenge that we've had in the past, but this is why I'm excited about having a secretariat. So there's ongoing work, is that sometimes you might have a program in the prison that's very effective, but it doesn't last very long. You might have a visiting, you know, counselor or something who works with the inmates, and they're doing really well, but they're only here for 6 months or a year. And then there isn't the continuity of these programs. So I think having something like the Secretariat that can ensure that these things are ongoing, I think that's going to make that, I'm sure it's already making a huge difference. What specific support systems have proved critical to the success, or you think will prove critical in terms of social services, mental health? That's a big one, family support, community groups, and so on. Tell me about where those fit into the equation, and which ones, if any, are more critical than others.
If I would say there's one that is more, it's just a line across the board. It's like you have a link, you know, so we just keep linking. It just goes across and it goes around, all around. So I would say all the agencies and various stakeholders that are currently involved, they play a critical role. You know, if we want to talk about, like he mentioned, you know, life goes on even when they're locked up. But what happened after they come out? You know, so the programs and when they come out, the persons that we connect them to, because they serve the time right? And they deserve another chance, right? So we start on the inside. We have the programs on the inside, and even after they come out, there's something to be continued. We're going to attach it to this person. We're going to attach it to this ministry, this type of resources. And of course, we want it to be a relationship. Not just we are finding all the solutions. We want you to have that connection with the Secretariat also. We want to build back the communities where we can feel safe, the children can feel safe, parents can feel safe, leaving their children at home, you know. We want it to be one that we can breed and harvest fruitful young leaders of the future. So the current persons or stakeholders that's on board right now, they all play a great role in making the Secretariat very, very, very fruitful.
What are some of the programs that are currently running or are planned? I'm particularly concerned about rehabilitation in the prisons, even if it just serves to, I don't want to say that, I don't want to be trite and say it was as a distraction, but something else. So there's something else. There's somebody coming to talk to them once a week about something, or they're learning a skill, or they're going back to school. But what are some of the ongoing programs that are assisting the inmates to, well, one, prepare themselves for to follow different paths, but also for personal development as well? I mean, I work with young people myself, and I know sometimes there's so much frustration that comes out of not understanding things, or not having particular skills, or feeling that nobody is listening to you, and those, you know, and that leads to some of the frustrations. It's so easy then, if, you know, to connect with people who you can say, okay, these are my brothers and they've got my back, and so on. And how do we, what are some, sorry, I've actually drifted from the original question, which is, what are some of the programs that are going to help them to prepare themselves?
The Elevate, they are so...
What's the Elevate program?
It's a...
Okay, so the Elevate basically came from what was previously known as a peace initiative. And so the present administration would have revamped the idea, which was the base of a lot of what we're experiencing, but they revamped it so that it could be more outreach towards it and more success, so that you don't leave it without any kind of foundation behind. That just people just look at you as a member of a former or present gang, a former resident of His Majesty's prison, and so they revamped the whole idea of the peace initiative. I'm not necessarily able to speak of a lot of their programs, but what I do know is two things. One, there was a program that they had in December. For me, it sticks with me because it means it really went deep with me, where persons who would have good records, whether you're a resident of His Majesty's prison or you're a person you're not incarcerated, we get evaluated for increment, etc., etc. So they too were evaluated, and based on their results, they were able to see their children, but not within His Majesty's prison, outside on Christmas, and they were able to get gifts and they handed it to their children. And so for me, that sticks with me because, like the gentleman said, there's life within His Majesty's walls, and so why do we ignore the fact? Because the reality is they have to return and live among us, and we're not. And so the program is also enlightening the community about how we react to them when they would leave, because it's not everyone is a gang member. Everyone has their moments of weakness. Everyone have a situation where they dealt with it based on emotion rather than the reality of the circumstance. And some people pay, not necessarily because that's what they want to. So now what Citizen Security does is also open the eyes of the community about what is happening and what we could prevent. And like remember I said, it's preventable. So what we could prevent so that persons, even when they're experiencing their moment, their emotional moment, or moments of weakness, they do not turn to deviancy, so that they do not end up in that position. So like I said, I can't necessarily speak too much of too many programs from Elevate, but that one stuck with me, and I know Elevate works very hard. They also go to entrepreneurs, NGOs, to ask them to fit the guys, the former residents, into their the workforce. And some persons have done that, some would have had issues, but continuous, obviously, communication could never die, and continuous rapport allow others to get to fit in. So, and like the gentleman, and while I'm on it, the gentleman is here, and in the grand scheme of the process or the approach, persons who are incarcerated historically are known as what you call violent interrupters. And because of their background, again, back to an infectious disease like HIV. All right. You can't send a police, well, you should not send the police, you should not send the Prime Minister, you should not send a PS to go and speak to somebody about HIV. Yes, you might tell them something, but you don't have the experience. But when you have the experience of having the virus, then you could relate to someone and give them the proper why, the do's, the don'ts, what's not, everything like that. So with the history behind violent interrupters are to utilize persons who study in psychosocial speciality and or former residents and of His Majesty's prison, or formerly Her Majesty's prison. And so you teach them how to communicate with persons who are involved in gang, and their thing is to mediate. Mediate, for example, somebody gets shot now, you try to get them there as soon as possible to deal with the family of the victim the person who has been shot, whether it's fatal or non-fatal.
Do you have trained people like that within the Secretariat at this time?
Yes, ma'am. And Dr. Powell is also one of the main persons who's responsible for that, and he's training persons and we have persons working alongside him. It's new, so we obviously, human resource, we could not have enough human resource, so we need to work on that as well. That's a little challenge, and then we have to also get those persons, like I said, the former residents, to buy into and keep their bargain, the side of the bargain. So like I said, those guys that will go to the victim family. So let's assume someone gets shot now and they're your cousin, they will get to you. And then the hospital plays a huge role because there are interrupters who will go to the hospital if it's non-fatal and try to calm. The idea behind it is to prevent retaliation. That's the grand scheme is retaliation. We don't, because most homicides are as a result of retaliation. You this, you took my parking space, you this, you killed my brother, whatever. So we're trying to prevent. So if you could prevent and reduce the number of retaliation, then the incidents drop, the prevalence drop, just like infectious disease again. I want us to stick with that. Mm-hmm. And then what happened? The crime rate must drop. And that's what we're experiencing now.
Of course.
We're on what happens there and get them to come on the outside. Let's boast about the academic programs that goes on in there, because some of these past residents, I must say that the actual instructors today, and some of them came out of His Majesty's prison with top subjects, grades, even degrees from what I understood, right? And they are today teaching some of our youths, helping them with their homework and stuff like that. So I commend that program on the inside, because you're learning something, you're learning how to make a difference, you're learning how to turn around, because the goal is to get you back on the outside, but get you back on the outside with a purpose. It's to get you back into society where you can contribute greater for the Federation at large.
Before we take a break, Mr. Gumbs, what for you, in your personal experience, what were the most effective programs or engagements or support that you got that were turning points?
As the lady indicated, the academics, I am one who did some subjects, came out. That's why I'm working in the government and is second in command and the Deputy Assistant Communication Officer in the communication unit, because of trying some subjects and passing them in eximious fashion.
Tell me about going to school there and when you were on the outside before. Were you academically inclined? Were you busy doing other things that you didn't even know you had the ability?
I didn't finish high school. I'm a high school dropout.
So that
I
was
went in there and seized the opportunity.
So it wasn't an ability thing. It was other things that were distracting you.
Yes, of course.
So education.
Yeah, and of course too as well. Well, for me personally, I did a lot of reading. And the more I read, the more my mind opened up and realized that that type of liberty or that type of lifestyle ain't for me. You know what I mean? And when I went to prison, I had respect because of the badness, because you do get respect for that. But I find that I get way more respect for being positive. And everything is about sense of importance. If I get more of a sense of importance for being positive, I can gravitate towards being more positive. And so while I was in there, I educate myself, and the more I educate, that's even before the subjects, opportunities came about. The more I educated myself by reading, the more I started making a conscious decision that may want to stay on the side of the fence.
You mentioned something really important, and that was that, I mean, a big part of the gang culture is about respect and status almost. Mm-hmm. I remember speaking to a former gang leader who said for him, he said he liked the power. You know, different people are drawn to different things.
Fear.
But what was missing, if anything, mm-hmm. that made you need that? Do you know, what were you not getting?
Yeah, well, for me personally.
So let's get to the root cause. What were you not getting that made the family of the gang mm-hmm. that drew you to it?
Family.
Your own personal family.
My father was non-existent. My mother traveled while I was at 4, and I was raised as an orphan. I was raised in the children's home. So me had that family, you know, knit connection that I craved. Even as a youngster, I craved it, but it was non-existent. So I grew up in a home with like 40-something people, strangers, 20-something boys, 30-something girls, whatever. And, you know, the age range was from 5 to 18, but they're flexible. Because I went there when I was like 4. Like sometimes the latest they be on 18 if you really ain't got nobody to take you out. But your role models are the older folks there. So when I find my role model is a 12-year, 13, 15, 16-year-old, not a parental figure. So for me, personally, it was a lack of parents. I think if I did have parents in my life, I would have never went to prison. I would have never even dropped out of school and those type of stuff. So I would say lack of parents.
I bet that's a common theme.
Sorry, just before we go on the break, I don't want us to miss
I don't want us to miss it.
So what I want to do, if we could go to this slide, the USAID would have done a very deep research. And if you look on the screen in the public, or even us here seated, we see exactly what he's saying. So sometimes people think that data, you go and you make up data. But I was not aware of this because at the time I was in Taiwan. Now, after I would have done the groundwork in the community, now look at the results. Root cause for leaving for gang violence. What did he say? Family. So I just want the public to know that what you're seeing and what you're hearing is not fake. It's nothing that we made up. We actually did the work. The work was done, we investigated, and based on the public's response, the family was the root cause, the main root cause. And respectfully, we have a young man who said it, so it shows that the correlation between what he said and what we have done, so we have a positive correlation to both sets of data. All right, so I just want, so the fact that we now have the root causes, it allows us now to attack the problem at the root cause. All right, so I just wanted to get that out very quickly.
And before we take that down, let's take if we can get that slide back up. What are the priorities of all of those root causes? How do you prioritize? Do you go with obviously the ones that
the more outstanding ones.
So take a look. So family, what are some of the things that we can do to address the fact that there are so many youth and even not so young people who don't have a sense of belonging to a unit, to a family, and so the gang becomes the family.
Yes.
So tell us how we can address that realistically. There's so many, and some of them we don't even know. Some of them are in families.
Right here.
Some of them are in families, and they have a parent in the household, but what is going on inside the household, they might as well not be, because the support isn't there. So it's not just a matter of where you physically are, it's where
communication.
Yeah.
So basically, you're asking if I understand about how we solve all the solutions. So again, the data says that the solution comes from the family, the community, the greater portion. Most persons would have said the police is not doing their job, the government is not investing, But when we look at the data says 70% of the grand scheme of the pie belongs to the community, which amalgamates families, church, schools, and the community itself outside of those institutions. So community has to take more responsibility, because I'm not certain of his age, but in my age, and I'm certain in other person's age, that you couldn't curse a bad word even if I'm not your mother, I would put my palm on your face. And we now would consider it abuse. But at that point, in that era, it functioned, because now I know I have to respect Miss Jane, Mr. Daniel, Mr. Rollins, whoever it might be, I have to respect them. So the community parented children away from the home. So when you get home, I don't think we even need technology, because then there was no technology, but your mommy know that your cuss a bad one and Miss Jane or John slapped you. They would have already known before you get home. So the community has to play a bigger role. We have to stop taking things for granted and recognize the power that the community has. So what they're doing to mitigate that issue is starting to let the community be more responsible. And rather than we go in and tell you what to do, we sit down with you and we decide with you, what do you think is the best route for Sadler's, for Keon, for Sandy Point, whichever. So I just want to, there's so much data, I mean, it's crazy.
That's okay, because that's what we want. We want specifics.
Okay, so if you could go back to the data quickly. So this is a specific data towards the greater issue that each community is facing. I grew up in Sandy Point, and you see the original issue in Sandy Point is family. The greater issue from the data for Sadler's will be work, job opportunities. Wow. All right, so it shows what are the main issue within. So it allows you to utilize your financial and your human resources correctly and basically not waste it and put something where something is not desired. So yeah, so the solutions are, we're working on the solution, like I said, because it's holistic. Every ministry is taking responsibility for their role, and we're trying. It is like the approach has been done in so many countries, and wherever the approach has been done, it is even been done in St. Kitts with chikungunya, Zika, and now COVID. And so the approach works. Everywhere it is applied, it works. And so wherever it applies, the most important thing though is the community taking responsibility and patience, because it's over time. Okay. Yeah.
All right. We are today talking about From Harm to Healing, United to Ending Violence, specifically through public health, looking at the challenges of violence and approaching it from a public health perspective. We're going to take a quick pause, and we're going to come back, and I want us now to hone in a little bit on how we get the community, other than going into the community and saying, oh, we need you to work with us specifically. Are there programs within the communities to that end? We'll be right back.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and a Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. In this edition, we discuss From Harm to Healing, United to Ending Violence through Public Health.
Your children's future dwindling.
Welcome back. Today on Conversations, we're talking about uniting to end violence through public health. My guests are Eartha, Carey, and Hance Richards from the Citizen Security Secretariat, which was born out of the original 90-day program, which was to end violence through public health. Ms. Carey is the coordinator, Mr. Richards is the research data analyst, and we have Mr. Rami Gumbs, who's actually with the communications unit with the Nevis Island Administration, but having himself lifted up through with the right support from a life of that. The pathway was not so productive. Mr. Gumbs had been involved in gangs. He'd served time and so on, and he now uses his free time to speak to others at risk, and to speak about his experiences. I had the opportunity to listen in. He was showing me a presentation that he did, and he was not mincing words. He talked about hearing the sirens and looking in your rear view and seeing the police are on you, and I mean, that's some heart-thumping stuff. But it's something that is relatable. It's something that these young people, when he talks to them, they go, oh my gosh, this guy understands. He's been there. And I think that's really critical. Let's talk, though, about how we can get other members of the community, including folks like Mr. Gumbs. What kind of specific training, resources, or even authority do communities need to be genuinely empowered, one, to identify problems, to develop solutions, and to really to lead their own healing and transformation?
So, through the community engagement that we would have conducted through the 90-day campaign and beyond the 90-day campaign, when we spoke to citizens, some of the things that we were listening to is that, just to sum it up, conflict resolution came to the forefront that they need training in. In addition to that, they spoke about just not knowing how to, whether they want to participate in team engagements and stuff like that. So we looked at interpersonal skills training for some of them, and believe it or not, they have been utilizing it. If we're going to talk about, we'll go back to the data where it showed that family issues was the number one issue when it comes to solving crime and violence. I remembered when we entered one of the community, a young lady, she looked about 11, 12, somewhere there. And when she approached me, she said, she understood the assignment, because she actually came to the event and she was paying attention. And then she came to me and she said, if I tell you something, would you tell my mommy? So, when you hear a child say something of such, you start thinking about what this child could be exposed to. And I thought about almost everything in the book, abuse and stuff like that. And when she said, my mommy is a good mommy, she just have a lot of work. She have a lot of jobs. I said, it's true. And then she was like, yes, but I want you to help her to be a better mommy, because what she knows is what was passed down to her from her parents. So we look at parenting training and stuff like that, and we introduced it to her, and she was very open, a little nudging here and there, but with consistency. It's all about having a conversation. It's all about going back. We get the information, but don't just get it and sit on it. It's about going back, retracing where we went, what they said, and the connections that we made. And we were happy to say that that parent, they took the advice of the Secretariat, because we attached them to whether it was social development, family counseling, and they participated.
So there are programs already that do parenting programs and conflict resolution.
Yes. And then we have some community leaders that came on board also to offer these type of simple trainings. They'll speak out to them about, we have a lot of entrepreneurs coming up, but they just lack certain information, whether it's management, money management, whether it's organization skills. And even if we look at those who want to enter the world of work and they're not getting the work. It's simple thing that they just really don't know. So when we identify those type of skills, something simple as not being able to put together a proper resume, something simple as not knowing how to dress to go to an interview, so those are the things that we train persons on. Whether I can do it, I'll pass it on to Hance or Miss Alicia Collins, whoever it is, we just find that resource and we attach the communities. And it has been working. It has.
That's really wonderful. And how do you, is there a schedule where you decide we are going into this community this month? Mm-hmm. Is it random? Is it you get a call? Is it somebody says, look, this community is struggling with? Mm-hmm. Like, how are those engagements made?
It's a mixture of everything that you just said. During the 90-day campaign, we, because a campaign and it was on a time frame, we would have scheduled which communities we would target. And we covered the entire St. Kitts. We even went over on Nevis, and we did some of that. We partnered with some of the churches over there. We partnered with the Royal St. Christopher Nevis Police Force. We went into the communities. We got the information. Of course, we went back to hear what they're saying. We also let them know what we did. So what we are planning on doing now, well, we did give an update after the 90-day campaign, but we're also going to go back now and let them know deeper what did the numbers look like and how they contributed significantly to the change.
Is there a risk of, I guess you could call it fatigue, if you will, that if you're going into the communities and you're talking to them about how they can be involved, and you talk to them about programs that you have, and we have programs on TV and on radio, does the public and the communities, do they get, yeah, I've heard that before, do they grow wary? How do we keep the momentum?
From my experience, yes, I got that. I think Hance got that too. But again, the mind frame of the Secretariat, persons who are involved with the Secretariat, if I can't do it, Hance will do it. If Hance can't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So we will hear that before, But again, even though you heard it, did you take the time out to understand it? Because a lot of persons, they just listen to respond versus listening to understand before they respond. Because they probably heard it from the peer that they don't work. But have you experienced the journey? How can you relate? Give me your rationale as to why it doesn't work, it did not work. Because you have not experienced it. You have not even took a step to say, let me find out where it is, who is in control of it, what resources there for me. So for us, we hear it, but we don't hear it because we can also identify the areas that are weak. And because we have the strong capacities to help you rebuild, restore whatever it is, and build that connection, we go right back in.
Do the communities need team building? What I have found has happened, even over the last 20 years, is that once upon a time you lived where you were born. You grew up with the people you went to school with. Nowadays, people hit a certain age, you get your first job, I can find a house to rent, or I can build a house, or I can get a piece of land. And what's happening is you don't even know your neighbors anymore, and those sorts of things. So while all of that is great and it's progress and development, are some of our communities, or are they just residential areas or neighborhoods,
Some are residential and some are community focused. And I can speak on my community, the great state of St. Peter's. Yes, I can speak on that. For example, for example, Father's Day just went, and this is the project that I live on. Fairly new to a point. And when I look at the fathers on my street, they just pull a chair, pull some dominoes, then I see persons on grill and them sort of stuff. One of the most sweetest thing I saw the other day that brought back memories is when you look at the children in the street playing the little football. At first it'd be like, oh Lord, the noise and stuff like that. But I prefer to see them doing that than to be engaged in anything that is not right? So some are just, oh, it's not my business, they go in the door. Yes, we have those. We do, realistically, can't hide it. But we also do have community-focused villages and stuff like that come together as a whole and try to do things in the communities.
What do you think is the most effective, and I mean evidence-based, that's your thing, Mr. Richards, evidence-based public health interventions for at-risk youth that focus on prevention, mentorship, positive alternatives, all of these things that Mr. Gumbs is talking about, even trauma support, and you know, how they can be rated or prioritized, if you will?
That's a very difficult question from my capacity. However, because it's a holistic approach, I think it's building a house. So one stack up on the other. So you can't do trauma, but then when you finish with your trauma training or treatment, you go home to a home or where there's violence at home or there's no parent, or you go back to the children home respectfully, or let's say you get good treatment from the family, but then when you go to another place, it's something else. So you want to try to make sure that they are all synchronizing, so that when you leave from one place to other, as we were saying is the same energy is passed on. And for me, there's no one thing. There's no one thing. Even if you, for example, we're using what you call indicators. And the indicators allow us to measure the epidemiological measurable tools that are used to check and analyze. So these indicators tell us what is working and what is not working, because we have to evaluate. And so I'm saying that to say that there's nothing that is left alone. It has to be holistic. So I can't say, just like the young man said, I can't say it's this or it's that. It's a lot of things come together to make one. It's just like you have cells make tissue, organs, systems, humans. So there's no one thing. It's a lot. Because I could say, okay, we're not going to do Secretariat anymore. And then it would trickle down to Elevate, and then trickle down to the young men, and then trickle down. So once everything is functionable, then that's the best response I can give to your question.
Mr. Gumbs, for you, education was key. From your perspective, what do you see as priorities? So education, really. What about something like mentorship? Was there that person? Was that person who saw someone in you and encouraged you, or that came from inside?
Initially, it came from inside. And then Mr. Nourishnet, I think most people are familiar with him. Yeah, he was a great mentor to us in there. Yeah, and there was an alternative AVP, so Alternative to Violence project in there, that I think was, you know, the few people who went, because not everybody is going to go to these things, it is optional. So people who are really interested in maybe some sort of reform will attend these type of programs. There was also some anger management programs in there as well. You know, teaching you how to deal with conflicts, resolution and that type of stuff. But I think one of the biggest is all about distraction. The activities in the streets, they are very compelling. And they could be very glamorous. So little sporting events, like you said, Miss Carey said, up at St. Peter's with the youth them playing. That's as much as they might be noisy, it is it's a better distraction than flinging stones or battles at one another and doing any sort of violence, right? So I think sports is a good distraction. That's one. As Mr. Richard says, you realize I remember the name now, Mr. Carey, Mr. Richard. As Mr. Richard said, it's not something that you could, no one thing you could pinpoint in particular and say it will be universally valid. You know what I mean? But it's a variety of stuff, variety of the spice of life. Whatever is a better distraction than committing crimes or being involved in gang-related activities, whatsoever it may be, I encourage it.
So whatever works,
whatever
or
works,
whatever resource is available, just
yes.
So we have to do these.
It's all about just having a more positive distraction, so to speak, doing something else different.
and understanding that different people are different and they would be drawn to different sorts
to different
of
things, yes.
programs and so on. Yeah.
And as you said that everybody is drawn to different things, that's why we also encourage the community leaders to take a stand, take a lead, because you know what's going on in the community, right? You know what your community is about, you know persons, you know their skills, you know whatever they can contribute back to the various communities. So the Secretariat is like a seed. We're planting the seed, and then you help us water that seed. That's where the community at large comes into play, from a holistic approach comes into play. So it's a touch one, each one stretch out your hand, and we build on the federation. All right, so that's what it is for us.
If there is someone in a community right now who thinks or they have an idea for some sort of community project that would bring the community together, not nothing that's going to cost money, but maybe just, even to have a games night or something like that. Supposing they might need some help or some input or advice, can people reach out to the Secretariat?
Yes, most definitely. We have an open door. You bring the ideas, we sit down, and what we try to do, we don't let you come in and just bring it. Come in, let's have a conversation, let's discuss it. Let's start from what is currently going on, what's not working, and how can we improve together. Again, it's a togetherness that we're looking at. We're not just casting persons aside. When we go into the communities, we don't go in as we know it all. We go in and we meet you. I don't even put makeup on and then start us up unless I'm going to leave straight from work and go in there. But I go in regular. We're meeting you where you are. So yes, we welcome everyone to come, bring the ideas, we can build upon them. Because it's not about me, It's not about me alone, it's about everybody. Everybody's all-inclusive.
Now, while we're talking about everybody, how, or I should say what kind of mechanisms are in place or are needed to ensure that all of the stakeholders can work together seamlessly? Earlier, we said, look, the lock them up thing doesn't work. I don't want it to seem as though we're saying that there isn't, of course, is a critical role for law enforcement and the police. But how do we make all of these agencies work together? Police, you guys, health, education, social services, the various NGOs and the communities. What sort of sustainable ongoing mechanisms are or can be put in place so that there's a long-term effect, that it's not just a 90-day project?
I will start, and probably Hance can say. What I would say is continuity. I don't think that we should just start here and just leave it. So the mechanisms we're starting with having the conversation, communication. We're also going to talk about education. Person doesn't know. And then thirdly, we're going to say awareness. We have to bring the awareness to the communities. Because like you mentioned earlier to me when I got in, many people do not know who the Secretariat is, where it is, and stuff like that. So we continue to bring that awareness, we educate the communities, and then we can build upon that to ensure that it's maintained. So Hance will go a little bit further.
Okay, so again, as I only can speak about information because I want people to trust what we are saying. So one of the things that we do is from the arm of the Secretariat, we will go and meet the different ministries. The Secretariat is comprised of a number of PSs and NGOs and different stakeholders. And my responsibility is also to go, like today I was at the education branch. So I go to different governmental institutions and share the information and let them know from sharing the information, now where do you fit in the grand scheme of things. So everybody have their branch. So I will let you know from the framework of the approach, the responsibility of the police, coupled with us, not that we're taking police work. Community policing is the main thing for us. So I did a community survey as it relates to perception of feeling safe and how you feel about communicating with police. And suffice to say, it is higher than we expected. Persons are saying, okay, we're not giving you a name, but we can tell you what we see. Because we are literally tired of the past. All right, and so just before I go any further, I always start with this host. If you could put me up, I just want us to go back in the past just for a second. That's the past, that's St. Kitts past in 28 years. That's almost 700 men and women in 28 years in a federation with such a small amount. We lose a generation already. So I want us to not take this crime thing as it's not my cousin, it's not me. No, because everybody is what you call a co-victim. A co-victim is someone, for example, someone gets shot now, he's from Sandy Point, everybody around him in Sandy Point is a co-victim because they know him, they heard of him, they've seen him. His parents or family co-victim. So we all suffer the trauma of a gunshot. Imagine also being a soldier myself. There are times when you go home and you just sit down like when he's going to stop. And one of my motivation was because I know that it couldn't be us alone because we all react. Whereas the approach is proactive. and we only react. We try to find. So we might find a gun, a firearm here, a firearm there, but we are not getting to the root cause. And so getting to the root cause, the only way to any solution to anything is this approach, basically. So once you get this approach, these numbers are now dropping. So the next one shows that since the approach started, we only have had 4 gun homicides in the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. I want to repeat that so people can understand. 4 gun homicides. For whatever it's worth, whether you say they put down the gun, our program, everything together is giving us a bigger piece than we ever had before. So in 2025, we only have 2 gun-related homicides. And we're focusing on that because that was basically the thorn in our flesh, or that was our biggest issue that was affecting the stability of the nation at the time.
Which programs or which approaches would you say could possibly account for that significant reduction?
Very good question. So the beginning of the perception, because the community approach, the community engagement gave you a different perception and outlook to how important of a role you play in the community to prevent. So that's one. The police are now taking a different approach in that they're doing more community policing. That's 2. Persons from Elevate, they are now also assisting where they can, whether they speak to youths or teach. There's so many things, like I said, that contribute to the change. So it's not one thing, but because of the approach gives us the perception that, yes, if we do these things, if we follow these principles of epidemiology, it can work. And like I said, anywhere, again, back to COVID. I don't want us to forget COVID. Remember what we did in COVID, all right? So nothing, we could wear masks, but if we don't social distance, we have a possibility of getting COVID, yeah? However people feel about the vaccine, again, I am not yea or nay in the vaccine. So we wear masks, we social distance, we take vaccine. Then the most important thing of the approach, though, is to disinfect. Because, you go home and, on your surface, you have to wipe it off with your Lysol and your Clorox. So we also like disinfectant. So after, in the at-risk areas, our communities, we go in and we disinfect what needs to be cleaned by educating people about what is happening and what has happened to change their perspective and let them recognize how important they are. So perspective of people's perception of crime and violence and perception of what is happening has changed. So there are key principles, and the last one is changing the norm, how you think. So rather than you retaliate, like Mr. Gumbs saying, rather than I retaliate, I educated myself. And so now I educate me, I could educate other people. So his perception and perspective has changed. So he has changed his norm. So if you keep preaching to each person, that norm is changed. If the police go in and do community policing, they will change norm, because now you don't see tit for tat. I don't like you, you're against me, me against you, but they communicate with you. And when I bring the information to you like I'm bringing now, holistically, that's responsible for the vast change. And everywhere in the world, like I said, where this approach has been taken on crime and violence, the consistency shows that the numbers would always drop annually, if that makes sense.
So you see?
We do have to take a quick pause for a cause, but without the specific data and without you making those connections, I think perhaps sometimes the public just thinks, oh, we've been lucky. And I think that more can be done. Well, programs like this have been really eye-opening. It's not just a random, oh, they've dropped. This is what we've been doing over the last couple of years. That's really great to see. We do have to take one more quick pause. We're going to come back and have a few more questions to throw at you guys. And I'd love to hear you engage as well with each other. We'll be right back after this, our conversation.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections and a Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. In this edition, we discuss From Harm to Healing, united to ending violence through public health.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
Conversation, because something I said brought another question to my mind, and that was I genuinely just, and I think a lot of the public, you know, in social media, we've just been, oh my gosh, we've been so lucky, thank you, Jesus. And yes, I'm sure that had a lot to do with it as well. I'm not saying not. Should we be doing something more to make sure that the public, I mean, this conversation that we're having now, what can be done on an ongoing basis to share this information? You've been collecting your data and you've shown how specific it is and so on. But how can we share it better to sort of continuously, you know, improve and continuously get the buy-in and continuously excite communities? Look, it's working.
Yeah, so you can go to the screen. So as simple as, so this is a homicide event screen. So I could tell you where the homicides were and where the non-fatal shootings were. All right, and then this one shows you the event. The event is the shooting, and you see like it has half a G, tell you specific. So the reason why I'm showing this is because people need to understand. We need to educate, because if we were not here today, you would not have known this is happening. And a lot of persons, after I mention it, they're like, for real, yes. So for me, the number one thing is media coverage. I mean, not that it's important that I'm, like I always tell the PM and tell the minister that I can do this all day, every day. I have enough energy. I literally could do this all day, every day. Just let people know
let me go out there.
Let me go and just tell people what we're doing, what you are saying, what you are doing, the results you're giving us, and by telling them, giving them their feedback from what they have done. So everything they do, give me, and I will tell the public what you have done. So we go around, what are you doing, what programs you're doing. So I know everybody would like to have the name mentioned, but for me, if you take away this, it's fine. I'm not a big mention person, but the reality is I am the one charged with this responsibility, so I'm sharing. But give me your information and I will let the public know. Because some of this is me and some of it is you. But that's one of the things, so we need to stay consistent. Educating. Because if we didn't know, again, COVID, if they didn't tell us about whether we have our own perception of how we perceive how COVID happened, etc. But if the CDC doesn't come on every day and tell us A, B, C, D, we wouldn't know. And then we start investigating. So I want you guys, everyone who's listening, to investigate what I'm saying to see if I'm giving you the correct information. Because it's important that you know. And the good thing about it is we were at a meeting with the Secretariat meeting. I think it was a peers of education. She said something. And as soon as she said it, I just click and I say,
right
referring to this?
Well, you've been doing that with us all day.
Yes. So,
I throw out a question and just, one sec, you know it, it's at your fingertips.
yeah,
Yes.
so these things are real, understand? And so we need to continue to programs like these. I've done a lot of engagement. I could come to your community. I've been to churches, Antioch-Baptist. I've been to other pastors, a group of evangelical association here in Nevis. I've been to Port. Wherever you need me, just contact the Secretariat. I'll come.
there.
I exercise a lot, so I have energy. Trust me, I could go. Because at the end of it, I want us to understand, we cannot go back to lose another generation of young men. Respectfully to everybody who's listening, that's 700 females who may not end up with a family, because or 700 boys and girls without a father and a mother. And that's very traumatic. That's 700 parents without their son or their daughter. That's very traumatic. So the amount of trauma that we have, we don't want to repeat it. So our responsibility is to prevent it. And don't take what we're doing at home for granted. So the little you do, thank you. Keep doing it.
Girls, are we even looking at the girls? Because as a high school teacher, I'm seeing behaviors with every passing year that suggests to me that girls are actually generally more aggressive than the boys. The boys just band together and you're my brother and I got your back, which means if one of them gets in something, you might have a big blowout because it's a support. But their actual demeanor, their behavior, they are not as inclined to blow up the way I've seen it happen with young girls and fight fisticuffs. Are you following that trend?
You know, at first it get me on one, but it's not that we're not following. We actually, even today, I said it in front of the education leaders that we need to get some data. The PS is aware because it was a big discussion point that we're realizing that females and the gangs are infiltrating the schools through females. And so we need to find a way to deal with that because we need our females, we need them to be their wives, their mothers, whatever they're supposed to be. And obviously like the dame, former ministers, we need them to play their role, and that is not acceptable on behalf of by anyone, but worse, a female. So we're looking at it, and we're trying to find a way to get the data. So hopefully next time I present, I can say we had 10 fights in Sandy Point, from January to February, 20 in Bassa High School. We want to give you that data, because we don't have that data, but we are paying attention to it. And there's a team of police officers who are working tirelessly. They have two fighters. Again, it's interruption. So they go home, talk to the parent over here, the parent over there, and then they bring them together. Before they bring them together, they do individual conversation. So again, and there's Sergeant Odein, who is part of the Secretariat, and her task is to deal with that aspect.
And the communication, I raised the question earlier, the communication between these groups, the stakeholders, you know, is there a procedure in place? Okay, so the first stop in a case of physical conflict, you may bring in the police and then the counselors, but is there a sequence, a fixed sequence of agencies that are involved in that process, or is it just sort of case-by-case basis? And should there be something more structured and uniform?
Okay, I'll go on then, Ms. Carey. So as a Secretariat, as the whole approach is new. This is our first anniversary. I think the Prime Minister will speak to it in the next 2 weeks. And so there are a lot of things that, obviously we have gaps and we have low-hanging fruit. This is the P.S. Clark favorite thing to say. So we have low-hanging fruits, we have gaps. And so we need to fill those gaps. And as they come, we fix them. What also the Cabinet would have approved, they make an approval for a department. So most of the issues that are happening within the community and within, to make things better, for lack of a better term, will go to the department, then the department will take it to the Secretariat, and they would come up with whatever decision they would make, and then the department will not go back to the communities and say ABC. So there are a lot of things that we're still working on, but the most important thing was to start the fight. So now that we are on the fight, we could start look at things like the things that you are mentioning now, so that we could get even more solutions and results from what we're trying to accomplish.
I want to throw this one out to anybody who wants to jump in or has thoughts on this, but beyond reducing harm, which of course is the first stop, beyond reducing harm though, how does this approach, this public health approach, actively foster individual, family, and community, I want to say empowerment, maybe resilience, if you will, and well-being as a buffer to future violence?
Repeat the question? I
No,
thought
well,
it was directed to either of them.
No, well, it's anyone. It's more a case of how can we, this type of approach, So not just the, not just the incarceration, so all of the programs and the projects and so on. How can they be used to actively build the individual, build the family, build the community, so that we can prevent further violence? It seems right now that it's very much on a case-by-case basis. So if we can help this one person, but is there some way to make it most effective?
Well, in my opinion, right, you see, it's all about, they're very much on the right path. I really want to commend them based on what I'm hearing here. And one of the things that I wanted to relate to them as well, the harsh reality is you're not going to save all, you're not going to get everybody to come over so don't ever feel like you fail because all ain't come on board and be a part of, you know what I mean? But it's all about just trying to, every individual have their own peculiar circumstance. And everybody has their own little, trauma or whatever they're going through. So if you want to get people on board with these things, you have to find out what really is at the apex of their drama. Trauma, whether it's trauma or drama. You have to find out what it is, and you have to act in accordance to whatever, because remember, as I said, right, these things are not universally valid. Nothing is universally valid, except maybe the word of God and those type of stuff, you know what I mean? So to me, it has to be more individual, which will take a lot more work. You can't just generalize something and cast it over a particular set of people and think that it's going to work for everybody. You have to kind of break it down imperceptibly with individuals and find out what it is. Because I have been in situations where somebody come in and they're speaking to us as a group and telling us this is opportunities here for you all, but I'm not interested in that particular opportunity. You know what I mean?
You just tune out?
Yeah, because I'm interested in music. You come and tell me music is there for you and my voice sounds like a Cookie Monster voice, so I have no kind of interest in that at all. So it's more work, obviously, to deal with things more individually, but that is the best method I could ever. That's the best way I feel. If you want to know how to deal with people, try to deal with them on an individual basis and find out the magnitude of whatever they might be going through, what assistance they might need.
Within the prison, do they have a system like a high school or like a rehabilitation home of counselors? Is there a system like that where there are enough counselors that did you have that when you were in?
They had counselors, but inmates are very skeptic when talking to counselors because we feel sometimes counselors come seeking information to utilize against us. So they are very, very, very skeptic in what they relate to counselors. But they, at least when I was there, right, and I spent a decade, I spent 10 years, right, very long time. So they did have counselors, but they were, not saying they were not trustworthy, but prisoners typically don't trust.
You're not trusting,
yeah.
Right.
So I was there, based on what he's saying, I was making a presentation to the police in Nevis last week, I think it was, or 2 weeks ago. And one of the police asked me about the violence interrupters. For example, let's say Mr. Gumbs is referring to why Mr. Gumbs cannot give him information about the shooter. I said, no, he can't. Because his responsibility is to interrupt. So with the interruption, you're trying to hopefully get them, the interruption idea is to change the idea of retaliating and change your norm, and within that change, maybe the person themselves come and tell you, this is the situation, this was the situation. And like I said, during interruption, persons have found out that simple things cause shootings. But the interrupter cannot speak to the police because then, like Mr. Gumbs said, they will lose the trust and the perception that, oh, you are coming to basically be a rat, rather than to look after my well-being. This is my trauma, this is my situation. So interrupters are not going to speak to the police. They have no, it is not legal for an interrupter to speak to the police, no matter how much info. And they don't even need your information. What they need to know is why you're doing it and how we could help you not retaliate. Do we speak with you and your family? Okay, let's speak to them. And so that's why I have that on the screen, the violence interruption, the first thing. So interrupt transmission. So their responsibility is to interrupt the transmission. Just like in COVID, we wear a mask with social distance. Their responsibility is to prevent retaliation. That's the transmission they're trying to interrupt. But the trust of these guys is so high that once it is found that they're communicating with the police about information, the whole thing, because this one is the foundation of the principle for any epidemic, pandemic, any public health issue that we might face in this world. Interrupt the transmission. The transmission, like I said, is to prevent retaliation. And the retaliation is the interrupters will try and have you not go over and retaliate. But I can't tell you. And so trust is a very important thing. And again, persons don't understand the magnitude of work that is going on. And like I say, if we don't keep educating, people will not realize how important to the fact that persons shot each other over parking space, and we're now trying to prevent that from happening. Obviously, I can't say because the judge said that we can't talk about those things. But as simple as a parking space.
Literally.
So, and that's a literal interruption that was found out during one of the non-fatal shootings that we had in the Federation for the year. And imagine that the interrupter would go and say, oh, it was Mr. Richards who pulled the trigger. But then the whole approach would fall. If it's one thing would cause us to fall, is the interruption. Again, if we didn't wear a mask, again, everyone stick with me, no mask, no social distance. Today, people will be dying from COVID. And so, if we interrupt the transmission and stop the retaliation, then we cannot give you that information because that's not the intention. All right. So it was.
So you see the reason, the mastermind behind all of this, and we must stop to pause and commend the Prime Minister for such initiative. You know, him being a doctor himself, you know, he understands where all of this is coming from, and so why he look at it from this perspective is commendable, because it delves into areas that we never thought of looking into. When he asked for this study to be done on Federation, St. Kitts and Nevis, not Antigua and Barbuda anymore, St. Kitts and Nevis, when the results came back, he dived into it. We looked at it, he looked at it and said, no, listen, we have to take a different approach, so we must commend him for taking that initiative. And we must also commend the stakeholders, persons who jumped on board from the very beginning, even when there was nothing to talk about the Secretariat per se. But we immediately understood the assignment because it was affecting us all, right? So we had to take a step and take steps further to make it stick and stay, so to speak, stick and stay with us, because if we're looking at it to bring about change, transformational change, everything, we have to take it from that perspective.
Oh, this is a St. Kitts and Nevis initiative. I saw some of the data included Nevis.
Yes.
You mentioned it. Do you do some of these outreaches in Nevis as well,
Yes,
as part of the routine?
Yes, we did. When we were during the 90-day campaign, we went over on Nevis and we did the same community engagement. We spoke to agencies, we spoke to various groups. Everything that we do here, we try to implement the same thing over on Nevis. We had the consultations from the very beginning. Nevis was also a part of that session too, so it's both of us.
Can I add to that because I need to? So to the divisions, a lot of the surveys, divisions are very, very responsive to it. Even the person who validates my work and make sure that my data is correct and my surveys are written up correctly is a division statistician. So Nevis is very, very much on board. We're now trying to go and have to meet with the persons from education to try and meet with the parents at school during parent-teachers meetings so that we could get their perception of why they think they're responsible they're the root causes of the problem. And so Nevis, must say kudos to Nevis for their continued support. They have never said no. There's like, yeah, when you come in. So yeah, Nevis has been very supportive.
I want to, as we wrap up, I'm going to throw this to all of you all, because this is more looking forward and musing about what you think, how you think things should work or play out, in the coming years, to focus a little bit on our independence theme of perpetual progress. What does perpetual progress look like in this scenario that we've been talking about today? So in terms of community safety and well-being and so on, if we look ahead 5 years, what are those non-negotiable elements or pillars do we need to achieve this vision of sustained public health action? We've gone from the 90-day campaign to a full secretariat. I hear there's talk about a department. Tell me about the next 5 years.
Okay, say it one more time. Say the last sentence one more time.
Okay.
Tell you about the last.
Oh.
Tell you about the last 5 years. That's
Yeah,
what you said?
no. Project 5
5
years
years.
into the future.
Screen. There you go.
Well.
So I guess you were looking at
He's good.
Yes.
So for the next 5 years, barring everything is the best we can get it. We have what you have on the screen is what we have, the desired outcome, but we have what you call a negative correlation. So let me explain and break it down, which I take pleasure in doing. So we have on the x-axis, we have years, and on the y, we have accounts. So we have community engagement, which is on the x. It goes from the bottom to the top. So for the next 5 years, we must have an enormous amount of education going up. So the more like today and after today.
And tell me, education, you're talking about academics?
Education,
or
awareness.
Awareness.
Making people aware of what is doing, what is being done, what is about to happen, and what role they might play. And if we could get that continuously going over the next 5 years, then the relation with violence it will drop. Now, what we don't want is for the reverse. We don't want to drop on the community engagement, otherwise the crime rate would increase. Again, back to COVID and closing. Take off your mask and see what would happen. The negative correlation is if everybody would wear their mask and social distance and disinfect over the next 6, 7, 8, 9 months to a year, 2 years, the number of affected persons or infected persons, because in infectious disease you do the right things, you wear your mask, etc. That would, if you increase that over the next year, then the infection rate would decrease, right? So that's the negative correlation. But if you do the reverse and don't wear your mask for the next year, so this would take the space, the top to bottom, and the infection or the contagious people would be bottom to top. That makes sense? And so that's what we're trying to do for the next 5 years. I tell you, I have you covered. Don't worry. All right, so the intention basically is to get the numbers decreased. And so with the numbers decreasing, we have to, like I said, we have to inform, we have to educate, we have to address these issues and get more persons on board, more programs on board during the period for the next 5 years. However, there's something I'm going to say respectfully. In CARICOM, one of the things that was said in the CARICOM meeting is, I want to put St. Kitts first, because St. Kitts is the only country in the CARICOM that is taking the approach, and the numbers are staggering in comparison to other countries. All right, so that's 1. 2, what we realized that when the approach was mentioned, persons had one concern at the CARICOM summit was changing leadership. One government come in, they take it or they don't take it. And one of the countries that were doing the program was Trinidad, was looking at the similar approach, and change of government.
Sometimes things are changed just to say, well, it was their program.
It was their program, even though it was functioning.
Is there a way to
my only suggestion is to policy, and maybe what you do in the House, and then you still could amend it anyway.
So somehow make it law or something.
Somehow make it law. But obviously laws can be amended. So it's still, there's no loophole.
But if it's working, I think you get the pushback.
The community would push back, I'm assuming.
Right,
so, yeah, so we want that this
That's
to
why
work.
we need the community engagement. We need the awareness.
Exactly.
So we are out there saying, this is our program.
Yes.
I am on board.
100%.
Okay. Mr. Gumbs, think 5 years in advance. Are they on the right track? Any other advice you want to give them? And tell me about your own role. You're part of the community. You're doing your thing.
Yeah, they're certainly on the right track to me. And as I enunciated earlier, don't feel because you ain't change everybody, you're failing. You know what I mean? I go and speak to groups all the time. I know everybody in the audience ain't going to take heed, but I could tell you. I know myself. If you see you are able to either change one individual, just one individual, you could save a family, an entire family generation of sorrows and grief. So every individual you are able to impact, the magnitude of your success can be accounted for. You're definitely on the right track, and I encourage you to continue doing so. And for me personally, I mean, I'm always open. I do it a lot, what I do in terms of
And you're doing
speaking.
this on your own time?
Yes. So one time, quick story, I minded my own business, my phone ring. Some USAID agents on the other line, we've heard of your story. Would you be willing to take a trip with us overseas and do some speaking on a public forum in front of USAID agents and ambassadors for big countries, etc.? Yes, so I mean, like, for me personally, because you ask me what is my intention be, I'm always here. Just call me anytime, and I will, 5 years, 10 years from now, because I know the kind of grief and pain I have put family members through when I was wilding. And now that I have transformed, I could tell anybody, if you change, if you are able to impact or change, even if you are able to prevent an outsider looking in, because sometimes they are the hardened criminals, but there are those who are outside looking in and fascinated and want to get in. If you could do anything to alter their mind from going into that particular lifestyle, as I say, you could save families, generation of sorrows and grief.
So I just wanted to, as he said, he made mention, sorry, not him, Mr. Gumbs made mention of USAID. The recognition of the work that we're doing in St. Kitts and Nevis has gotten to the security department of OAS to the point where I had to make a presentation there. So because again, I'm not somebody who's going to say much, so I'm not going to, because fame is not my thing, is production and success is my thing. But yeah, that's where we at, and I'm certain when the Prime Minister speaks to it from a UN point of view, that could be the next point, because again, it's very RSS, Carey, OAS, they're all buying in and trying to find out how St. Lucia, Dominica, and other countries are.
We recently had
seeking
Anguilla
Is
here.
this ours? I mean,
Yes,
did
it
we
is.
create this whole approach?
The approach
or-
started with a doctor named Dr. Slutkin from the United States, specifically from, I think he was from Chicago. When he went to Africa to do some work, he was like, how can this fit in? Because he was dealing with Ebola and cholera and those outbreaks. How can this go to humans? And when he went, he started asking the questions, does anybody know what the root causes are? And he put a correlation of the infectious disease along with humans, everything as a root cause. How could you prevent it? And so basically I call him the godfather of the approach. However, in terms of now this present day success and work, yes, St. Kitts.
And applying it specifically
yes.
to
Everything
violence.
else is ours.
Ours.
And publicly, let me say this, that this is nothing to do with no foreigners. We all from St. Kitts and Nevis. All locals, no foreigners.
I all need to be tooting your horn a lot more. Like
Not me, I'm not for that.
Miss Carey, you'll have to be the horn tooter. But we don't have, actually we're out of time, but I did want you to just say, the gentlemen had their due. Mm-hmm. I'd like you to just say the last few words. You're the coordinator of the Secretariat. Mm-hmm. And decisions you make are going to determine if their vision comes to pass.
Yes.
Your last words.
Of course. I just want to say openly that we are building partnerships because, like I mentioned earlier, I can't do it alone. Hance can't do it alone. Mr. Gumbs cannot do it alone. Toni, you can't do it alone. So everybody has to come on board, and that is why when we put it out there, we set this from a holistic approach. So what I want to say to the audience and everyone at large is that just come on board. If it's a simple question, ask it. There's no stupid question, because between that question might be an answer for something. So, right, so I'm just saying thanks to everyone that came on board thus far. Thank you to the Prime Minister, of course, who initiated this, and everybody, even the small children, because they have a lot to say, and we do listen. When we went over to Sadler's last week or 2 weeks ago, the children, they came, and we listened. we listened, right? When we get into the community again, they ask, what are y'all doing? And then we just explain to them and they'll be like, oh, okay. So it's an open thing that we have going on because we want change. And how can we change? By everyone coming on board. We speak about if there's teamwork in the communities, it can be improved upon. It's there, but it can improve, right? So everyone just come on board. We welcome you, and we just want to say we want to have a healthier federation.
Sorry, I don't want to take away her moment, but there's someone I've missed. And not because
okay.
I was waiting for the last moment, because he was the main speaker at the first CARICOM Summit for Public Health Approach, Dr.
Isben Williams.
He's my mentor, right? So he's the one who kind of helped me through the process and encouraged the Prime Minister to take the approach. Whoever else came up with the idea, but he would have had these ideas before, and the relation with him and Dr. Rowley, who was the former Prime Minister of Trinidad. So he was the featured speaker of the first summit. And then it was me, and then I don't know who will be next month, because the next summit will be here next year. That would be the third one. So, ending by saying, Congress would have said that we small, but we...
Talawa.
Okay, that's me.
And that's a wonderful note to end on, because all of these conversations are all about us as a nation,
yes,
and our progress and how we can have a sustainable future. And with this project or program, it's very exciting. You know, somebody who covered a lot of sadly of violent crime and so on. It's tremendous to see the results of, you know, looking at the data. We do have to wrap up today's program, and even though we're out of time, I did want to invite all of you to continue to observe and celebrate our independence, and of course Heroes Day in the coming days. First, I'd like to thank in particular all of those involved in conversations, spearheaded by and envisioned by the Independence 42 Planning Committee, the Cabinet Secretariat, of course, the St. Kitts and Nevis Information Service, SKNIS, Chameleon Media, and of course ZIZ Radio and Television that has allowed us to broadcast these programs. And of course, all of the panelists we've had over the last few weeks, to the public, to you for tuning in. It's lovely to walk through the street and have somebody say, oh, I was listening to your program, or I was watching the program. Thank you all so much. I'd like to extend a special invitation to everyone out there to attend the Prime Minister's lecture series tonight at 7. It is at the Sir Cecil Jacobs Auditorium at Eastern Caribbean Central Bank. If you cannot physically be there, if you're in the diaspora, or mobility or transportation is an issue, of course it will be streamed as well. The guest speaker is a daughter of the soil, Willa Liebert Tavernier, and the topic is Perpetual Progress, our theme, towards a sustainable information ecosystem. Who owns our stories in the digital age? Very, very relevant to today's society. As I said, live stream will be available both through the SKNIS and ZIZ's Facebook pages and YouTube channel. We've got a number of other activities coming up. The National Service and Gospel Concert is on Sunday at the Zion Moravian Church from 4 o'clock. Of course, the National Heroes Day ceremony next week on the 16th, that's Tuesday, right? And a reminder that the parade, or Independence Parade, is in the evening. It's 6 o'clock instead of the early morning. We want to make sure we get everybody to come on out. Friday is National Color Day is yellow. I'm ready. See, I'm ready. I'm getting ready with my yellow nails. And it's also National Sneaker Day. Everybody being invited to wear their sneakers. I hope you have some yellow sneakers and you can, do both at the same time. But of course, all of the schedules are out on all of those places that I've mentioned, SKNS, ZIZ, and so on, and of course all over Facebook, my own page. So please get involved. 42, we're going strong, and we're heading towards a great future. Thank you all so much. In Focus is back next week. Thank you for joining us.
The St. Kitts and Nevis Independence 42 Committee presents Conversations, Reflections, and a Way Forward. This interactive discussion series provides an in-depth view of the trials and achievements of the past, as well as the accomplishments, threats, and tremendous opportunities of today and in the coming years that will transform the Twin Island Federation into a model sustainable island state, serving as a beacon for all. In this edition, we discuss From Harm to Healing, United to Ending Violence through Public Health.
Could you see your children's future dwindling?
Oh, okay, okay, so come here, but stand in front of me because I need to